Hello, I'm Sim Goldblum, and this is the second video in our series in association with Mindmaps Wellbeing. In the first video we explained how paradox traits are really helpful in understanding how we think and how we operate. And recall that a paradox can be defined as two opposing or contradictory statements that are in fact both true. Now we're going to look into each of the 5 pairs of traits in the next 5 videos, and we'll begin with the communications paradox. So, as you can see in the red highlight area, the communications paradox sits on the first column on the 3rd row. And it looks at how we communicate in general, day to day, nothing to do with making formal presentations. We define it about managing, being direct, being tactful when we're communicating with others. So frank or direct is our action trait. It's on the left hand side of the graph, and we define it as being straightforward, direct, to the point and forthright. And our supportive trait on the lower axis is our diplomatic trait. It's called diplomatic trait, the tendency to state things in a tactful manner, often in a respectful manner. And so we do that so people can hear what we are saying. And as usual, we have 4 quadrants. When we're in balance, in the bottom left we have avoids communication, in the top right we have forthright diplomacy, and when we're out of balance, the top left, in this case blunt, is our aggressive imbalance, and on the lower right is the evasive quadrant when we're in a passive imbalance. So if we look at aggressive imbalances first, now if we're very frank and not very diplomatic, we can end up in this area that we call blunt. But the unintended consequence is that while we think that we're being straightforward and to the point and honest, other people could perceive us as being blunt and therefore will not receive our message properly, or they'll get defensive as soon as we start speaking because our tone is blunt. And we have to be able to help people who are like this to understand different ways to present their opinions so that we are more likely to hear what they are saying. When we're in a passive imbalance, we have a strong preference for being diplomatic. And you will think you're being caring, considerate, and making sure that people really understand what you say. But you say it so tactfully that this could have the unintended consequence of your being perceived as being evasive, or perhaps not telling the truth. In this case, we need people who are like that and have that preference to listen to other people's views and respectfully say what they agree with and what they disagree with, and most importantly, why. When we are able to put both together, the frank and the diplomatic, in a strong way, then we get at the top right-hand corner the forthright diplomacy. And that means that you can actually say things that need to be said, say them in a way that the message is clear and can be received, and say them in a way that people can respect and understand what it is that you're saying. In the lower left-hand quadrant, we're neither frank nor diplomatic. We'd rather just not communicate, and that can be very uncomfortable. Of course, there are situations, for example in a lab situation where I don't talk to many people, if any, during the working day, and we're all actually scientists together, lab scientists together. It may well be that not being great communicators is not a big problem. It's when we get into the outside world and then have to tell people about our results that we may be finding ourselves in a challenge. It's worthwhile noting and thinking about that people who are naturally more blunt can often see diplomatic people as being indecisive or weak, while diplomatic people can often see frank people as being very rude. And the point here is that we believe that our traits are virtuous and we demonize or trivialize the opposite trait. So we need to be aware of how this paradox in communication can help you become much more effective. If you'd like to learn more about this paradox, then please call or email as shown on the screen. Thank you very much for listening and watching. Our next video will be the opinions paradox, Thank you.